Sarah Mitchell weighed 83 pounds. Terminal cancer had ravaged her 28-year-old body for 2 years. She couldn't walk, couldn't stand, couldn't move her legs at all. The doctors had given her weeks to live, maybe days. But Sarah had one request before she died. One impossible, heartbreaking request that made everyone who heard it start crying. She wanted to dance one more time. Sarah had been a professional ballet dancer with the Royal Ballet. She'd performed Odette in Swan Lake to standing ovations. She'd spent her life in motion, in grace, in beauty. And then cancer came, took her breasts, took her hair, took her strength, took her legs, left her in a wheelchair, 83 pounds, dying. But on July 14, 1988, at Wembley Stadium in front of 72,000 people, Michael Jackson did something nobody thought was possible. He looked at this dying woman in her wheelchair and said 7 words that would create a moment so beautiful that grown men would cry remembering it years later. "Sarah, will you dance with me tonight?" What happened next during 3 minutes and 42 seconds, while human nature played in a stadium full of witnesses, was either a miracle or proof that the human spirit can't be killed by something as small as cancer. Sarah Mitchell couldn't walk, but that night, she danced. And in dancing, she taught 72,000 people that you're only truly dead when you stop trying to live. July 14, 1988. Royal Marsden Hospital, London. Sarah Mitchell lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles she'd memorized over the past 6 months. Room 347. The cancer ward, where people came to die slowly while doctors pretended there was still hope. And in dancing, she taught 72,000 people that you're only truly dead when you stop trying to live. July 14, 1988. Royal Marsden Hospital, London. Sarah Mitchell lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles she'd memorized over the past 6 months. Room 347. The cancer ward, where people came to die slowly while doctors pretended there was still hope. Sarah knew there was no hope. Had known since the oncologist sat down 2 weeks ago with that look the one doctors get when they've run out of options and need to start the make you comfortable conversation. Stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, spread to her bones, her brain, her lungs. Inoperable, untreatable, terminal, weeks, Dr. Phillips had said. Unable to meet her eyes. Maybe a month if we're lucky. "I'm so sorry, Sarah." Sarah was 28 years old. She weighed 83 pounds down from 119 before the cancer. Her hair was gone, lost to chemotherapy that hadn't worked. Her breasts were gone, removed in surgeries that hadn't stopped the spread. And her legs, her beautiful, strong dancer's legs that had carried her across the world's greatest stages, were paralyzed. The tumors in her spine had seen to that. 6 months ago, Sarah could still walk with assistance. 4 months ago, she needed a wheelchair. 2 months ago, she lost all feeling below her waist. Now, she couldn't even shift her position in bed without help. The morphine drip kept the worst pain at bay, but it couldn't touch the ache in her soul. The longing to move again, to feel her body obey her will, just once more. But what killed Sarah more than the cancer, more than the pain, more than knowing she was dying, was knowing she would never dance again. Dancing wasn't just what Sarah did. It was who she was, had been since she was 4 years old, and her mother enrolled her in ballet classes. She trained at the Royal Ballet School from age 11, had joined the Royal Ballet Company at 18, had been promoted to soloist at 23, one of the youngest in the company's history. She danced Odette in Swan Lake, Giselle, Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, had performed for the royal family, had received standing ovations at Covent Garden, had spent her life in motion, in grace, expressing emotions through movement that words could never capture. And then, at 26, she'd found the lump. Stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive, fast spreading. The oncologists were optimistic she was young, strong, a fighter. Mastectomy, chemotherapy, radiation. The second round of chemotherapy had been brutal. Destroyed what little strength she had left. Made her so sick she wished for death just to escape the nausea. And it hadn't worked. The cancer kept spreading, kept taking, kept winning. Now, lying in her hospital bed at 83 pounds with paralyzed legs and weeks to live, Sarah had one wish. One impossible, heartbreaking wish that she knew could never come true. She wanted to dance one more time. James walked into Sarah's hospital room carrying coffee and forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd been doing that a lot lately, forcing smiles, pretending everything would be okay, lying to both of them about hope. James was Sarah's fiancé, had been for 3 years. They were supposed to get married 18 months ago, had the venue booked, the invitations printed, the dress chosen. Then the cancer came back, and they'd canceled everything. James had wanted to have a bedside wedding, make it official before the end, but Sarah had refused. "I won't marry you like this," she'd said, her voice weak but determined. "When you remember our wedding, I don't want you remembering me dying. I want you to remember me dancing." Except Sarah would never dance again, and they both knew it. "Hey, beautiful," James said, sitting beside her bed and taking her skeletal hand in his. "Guess what? Make-A-Wish came through. We've got VIP tickets to the Michael Jackson concert tomorrow night at Wembley. Front section. Best seats in the house." Sarah's eyes lit up for the first time in days. "Really? We're going?" "We're going," James confirmed. "I already talked to Dr. Phillips. He's arranging for a medical team to accompany us. Wheelchair accessible entrance, private area, the whole thing." Sarah started crying, those frustrating cancer tears that came too easily now, triggered by the smallest emotions. "James, I love you. Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." What James didn't tell her was that he'd spent 2 hours begging Dr. Phillips to approve the trip. The doctor had been reluctant. Sarah was too weak, too sick, too close to the end. Moving her was risky. She could have a medical emergency at the concert. She could die there, but James had insisted. Because he'd watched Sarah die slowly for 2 years, and she'd had so little joy in that time. If watching Michael Jackson perform could give her one evening of happiness before the end, it was worth the risk. What neither of them knew was that this concert would become something more than just one evening of happiness. It would become the most important 3 minutes and 42 seconds of Sarah's entire life. The next evening, James pushed Sarah's wheelchair through the special entrance at Wembley Stadium. She was dressed in her favorite scarf to cover her bald head, wearing makeup for the first time in months, her skeletal frame hidden under layers of clothing that hung off her like she was a child playing dress up in adult clothes. But her eyes were bright, alert, alive in a way James hadn't seen in months. The medical team followed behind a nurse and a doctor, just in case. Sarah had a morphine drip for pain management. She'd taken anti-nausea medication. She'd done everything to prepare for this evening. Because this wasn't just a concert. This was Sarah's goodbye to the world of performance. Her last connection to the dancer she used to be. They were escorted to a private VIP area with an accessible view of the stage. Sarah could see everything: the massive crowd of 72,000 people, the elaborate stage setup, the lighting rigs that would create magic once the show began. "We're really here," Sarah whispered, squeezing James's hand with what little strength she had. "I can't believe we're really here." James kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of her sweat and the chemical smell of sickness that never went away. "We're here, baby, and it's going to be amazing." What James didn't know, what nobody except Michael Jackson's inner circle knew, was that Make-A-Wish had sent more than just a request for concert tickets. They'd sent Sarah's entire story. Professional ballerina, terminal cancer, paralyzed, dying, and one final wish: "I just want to dance one more time." Michael Jackson had read that file backstage 2 hours before the concert, had seen the photos of Sarah before cancer, vibrant, strong, graceful, performing Odette with her arms creating the perfect swan's wings, and photos of Sarah now skeletal, bald, confined to a wheelchair, dying. And Michael had made a decision that would either create the most beautiful moment of his career or the most painful. The concert began at 8:00 p.m. Michael emerged from beneath the stage to thunderous applause and screaming that shook the stadium. Foundation. He launched into "Wanna Be Startin' Something" with the explosive energy that made him the greatest performer alive. For 90 minutes, Sarah was transported. The pain faded. The cancer disappeared. She wasn't dying, she was watching art. Watching someone move with the kind of grace and precision she understood in her bones. Every spin, every slide, Every gesture was perfection. Sarah's hands moved unconsciously in her lap, tracing the choreography she could no longer perform. Her body remembered even when it couldn't obey. James watched Sarah's face more than he watched the stage. Watched her eyes light up. Watched her smile, a real smile, not the forced one she gave visitors in the hospital. Watched her mouth form the words to songs she'd listened to 1,000 times. This was worth it. Whatever happened, this moment was worth it. After Man in the Mirror, Michael addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, before I continue, I want to share something with you. Tonight, we have a very special guest. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She's 28 years old, and Sarah is a dancer. Sarah's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. James felt his stomach drop. No, what was Michael doing? Sarah performed with the Royal Ballet, Will continued, his voice carrying across the stadium. She danced Odette in Swan Lake, Giselle, Juliet. She spent her life in grace and beauty and motion. And 2 years ago, Sarah was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The stadium went quiet. 72,000 people listening. Sarah is here tonight, and she has one wish. One beautiful, heartbreaking wish. Michael paused, and even from their seats, they could see the emotion in his eyes. Sarah wants to dance one more time. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face. James's hand was gripping hers so tight he was afraid he'd break her fragile bones. Sarah Mitchell, where are you? Michael called out. A spotlight found them. 72,000 people turned to look. Sarah tried to shrink into her wheelchair, overwhelmed and terrified and not understanding what was happening. Sarah, Michael's voice was gentle now, speaking directly to her. Will you dance with me tonight? Sarah shook her head, crying. I can't, she said, though her voice didn't carry without a microphone. I can't walk. I can't. But Michael's security team was already approaching, and James understood what was about to happen. He looked at Sarah, saw the terror and hope and desperate longing in her eyes, and made a decision. Do you want to do this? He asked quietly. Sarah looked at him, tears streaming. I can't dance, James. My legs don't work. I'll just embarrass myself. Do you want to try? James interrupted. Yes or no? Sarah's breath caught. She looked at the stage where Michael Jackson waited, looked at the 72,000 people watching, looked at James. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. Security helped James lift Sarah, all 83 pounds of her, into his arms. The medical team protested, but Michael's people had already cleared this. They moved through the crowd toward the stage. Sarah clutched against James's chest, her paralyzed legs hanging uselessly. When they reached the stage, Michael himself came down to meet them. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, seen past the sickness to the dancer underneath. Hello, Sarah, Michael said gently. Thank you for being so brave. Sarah couldn't speak, could only cry and nod. I'm going to carry you, Michael said, and we're going to dance. Not with legs, not with steps, but with heart, with soul, with everything that makes you a dancer, even though your body has forgotten how. Is that okay? Yes, Sarah whispered. Please. Michael lifted Sarah from James's arms. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a child. He carried her onto the Wembley Stadium stage in front of 72,000 people. The opening notes of Human Nature began to play. Michael held Sarah against his chest, one arm under her paralyzed legs, the other supporting her back, and he began to move, not dancing exactly, just swaying gently to the music, rocking her like a father would rock a child. But Sarah's arms, her beautiful, graceful dancer's arms that still remembered what her legs had forgotten, lifted into the air, into fifth position, into the swan's wings from Odette. Her hands began to move through the air, telling a story only dancers could understand. Porte de Brass, the poetry of arms. While her legs hung useless, her upper body danced. Every gesture was muscle memory, etched so deep that not even cancer could erase it. Her fingers told stories her voice could never speak. This was her language. Michael turned slowly, giving her the experience of movement, of being on stage, of performing. Sarah's arms continued their ballet, creating shapes and emotions and beauty even as her body failed her. 72,000 people watched in absolute silence. Many were crying. Some had their hands over their hearts. Everyone understood they were witnessing something sacred. The song continued. Michael kept moving, kept giving Sarah the gift of motion, and Sarah kept dancing with whatever parts of her body still remembered how. If they say why? Tell them that it's human nature, Michael sang, his voice breaking with emotion, because this moment was the definition of human nature, the refusal to surrender, the insistence on beauty even in dying, the determination to dance even when your legs won't work. As the song reached its final verse, Michael slowly, carefully, set Sarah down on the stage floor. She sat with her paralyzed legs splayed awkwardly in front of her, but her back was straight, dancer's posture even now, and her arms were still moving through their graceful patterns. Michael knelt beside her, took one of her hands, and kissed it, like a prince in a ballet, honoring the dancer. When the final note faded, the stadium erupted. Not polite applause, not sympathy clapping, but a thunderous, sustained standing ovation that went on for nearly 5 minutes. 72,000 people on their feet, crying, screaming, celebrating this moment of defiant beauty. Sarah collapsed against Michael, sobbing. "Thank you," she kept repeating. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." "No," Michael said, holding her. "Thank you for reminding us what courage looks like, for showing us that dancers never stop dancing, even when their bodies give up." "Thank you, Sarah." James rushed onto the stage, taking Sarah back into his arms. She clutched his neck, still crying, still unable to form coherent words. As James carried her off stage, Sarah looked back at Michael one more time, and mouthed 2 words, "I danced." Michael nodded, tears streaming down his own face. "You danced." 3 weeks later, Sarah Mitchell died peacefully in her hospital room, with James holding her hand. She'd lasted longer than the doctors predicted, perhaps given extra time by whatever alchemy of hope and joy she'd experienced that night at Wembley. In those final days, she spoke often of the dance, of how her arms remembered, of how, for 3 minutes, she was whole again. Her last words were about the dance. "James, I danced with Michael Jackson, in front of the whole world. I really danced." "You really danced," James confirmed, crying. "You were beautiful." Sarah smiled. And then she was gone. At Sarah's funeral, James played the video from Wembley Stadium, the footage of Michael Jackson carrying Sarah onto stage, of her arms lifting into swan's wings, of her dancing with whatever strength remained in her dying body. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. Michael Jackson sent flowers, and a note that James would keep for the rest of his life. "Sarah taught me that dancing isn't about legs or strength or health. It's about the refusal of the human spirit to surrender to death." She danced more beautifully in 3 minutes than many people dance in a lifetime. The stage was honored to hold her. MJ, today, there's a small plaque at Wembley Stadium. It reads, "On July 14, 1988, Sarah Mitchell danced here one last time. She taught 72,000 people that you're only truly dead when you stop trying to live." James is now 63 years old. He never remarried. He runs a foundation called Dance for Life that provides arts experiences for terminally ill patients. He's helped thousands of people have their own final moments of joy, but he tells everyone who asks, the most important thing he ever did was push Sarah's wheelchair into Wembley Stadium that night and say yes when she asked if she should try. "Sarah taught me something that night," James says to every group of patients he works with. "She taught me that the body can be broken, destroyed, killed by disease. But the spirit, the human spirit that makes us who we are, can't be killed by anything as small as cancer." Sarah's legs didn't work, but Sarah danced. Because dancing isn't about legs. It's about refusing to let death steal your joy. The video from Wembley has been viewed over 100 million times. It's shown in medical schools to teach doctors about quality of life. It's shown in psychology classes to teach about resilience. It's shown in dance schools to teach about the true meaning of performance. But more than that, it's shown to dying patients around the world who need to see proof that life isn't measured in breaths, but in moments that take your breath away. Sarah Mitchell had weeks to live, maybe days. She weighed 83 pounds. She couldn't walk, couldn't stand, couldn't move her legs at all. But for 3 minutes and 42 seconds, On a stage in front of 72,000 people, Sarah Mitchell danced. Really danced. And in doing so, she proved that the human spirit is stronger than any disease, any disability, any death sentence. Because sometimes healing isn't about curing the body. Sometimes it's about freeing the soul for one perfect moment. And sometimes one perfect moment is enough to make a whole life worthwhile. Sarah danced, and 72,000 people watched. And the world learned that you're only truly dead when you stop trying to live. 2 days later, Sarah's toes moved. Doctors couldn't explain it. Some things defy science.